Welcome to the first ever episode of Two Ales and Hockey Tales with Wally. Um, we are very, I am very excited to have on one of the biggest beauties I know, Luke Piggott, who is an 8-year professional hockey player, 3 years of professional coaching as an assistant coach, as well as curing a kind of breast cancer. I think that's a pretty interesting story. I don't know many people that have played hockey and cured cancer. Um, anyways, Luke, I guess welcome to the first ever episode.
Wow, it's a bit of quite the honor to be the first person interviewed on the Wally podcast. I'm pretty excited by that.
Well, my emotions, I tussled with them trying to figure out who should be first. But realistically, I think you have the most interesting story of any hockey player I've ever met. Um, I know how smart you are because I've been around you, but I think all the listeners will get a real kick out of this because, yeah, you're a very interesting human. Okay.
Well, Wally, I think you're the most interesting human that I know, so it's not really a fair comparison.
Okay, so this is what we'll do then. We're basically going to we'll start from the start. Where were you born and when did you start playing hockey?
So I was born, obviously, in Calgary, Canada, as you know. So Canadian by birth, although my entire family's British. Natively, but my dad was posted over there for work, so I was born in Canada, and that's essentially how I got into hockey. He was a big fan of the Calgary Flames. Him and my mum got into watching hockey when they lived in Calgary, and then they thought it'd be a good sport for my brother to learn how to play. So my brother, being 18 months older than me, he got onto the ice when he was about sort of 4 years old, 4.5, and then, as kids do at that age, I wanted to do everything that my brother was doing. So I saw him out on the ice and I kicked up a stink essentially until my parents would let me go out and learn how to skate. And the funny thing was, I guess my brother was in like the mini mites or whatever it was called back then. And they had an age group for him, but I was too young to be put on the ice with them. So what the coach did was he essentially gave me a chair and he said, all right, you just push this around the ice for the whole time that the rest of the kids are practicing. And that's how I learned how to play, or at least how I learned how to skate. And then it just grew from there.
So, what age did you live in Calgary till?
So we left Calgary on my second birthday, actually. And then we moved down to Houston, obviously not exactly a hockey hub of the world, but we continued playing. We found a rink nearby that we kept playing all the way up through the junior ranks to the age of 9 before we moved back to the UK, and then found a new club when we moved back to the UK too, and kept playing from there as well. So a couple of non-hockey areas really, but maintained the interest and played the entire time.
So basically, you fell in love with the game at the age of 2, and then you weren't around the game or a hotbed of the game until, well, like ever. So you just kept the passion, the love of the game, and found a way to keep playing wherever you were.
Exactly. Yeah. At no point really did I ever play in an area that was a hockey hotbed, shall we say? Until, of course, I headed over to Cardiff and you came over, and then it became a hockey hotbed.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess I should give the backstory. Is Luke and I played together in Cardiff the year I did my MBA while playing, and so now, Luke, why don't you tell the listeners what you're doing now?
So now I live in Switzerland and I work for a pharmaceutical company called Farm, and we develop drugs for new drugs for patients. And we essentially take them from the early stages put them through clinical trials, and then license them out to big pharma, who then do all the marketing and get the market authorization done so that it becomes a new staple treatment for patients in different types of cancer.
So yeah, it's a bit over my head, but what kind of cancers would your team be working on? Like, do you have a team then?
Yeah, so I work within a team, and we focus on all different kinds of cancer. I mean, our biggest drug that we've got right now is a drug for head and neck cancer, which is our most advanced asset, which is just shown really great results in our phase 2 clinical trial. And then, but the company itself has developed drugs in all kinds of cancer indications, and one of the big blockbuster drug that it's famous for is oxaliplatin, which is a platinum agent which is used to cross all different types of cancer as a chemotherapy agent. So we really do work across every different type of cancer with our drugs to find out which ones they work best for.
Wow, yeah, for everyone listening, if anyone listens, I don't actually care if anyone listens, because this is really fun to just call my buddies and shoot the breeze and have a beer. But like, to put into perspective, when I played with pigs, we would show up to practice, we'd work out, we'd practice, we'd do all the stick handling or cold tubbing, whatever our coach made us do, all the other stuff. And then pigs would go and cure cancer after that. So I would be done work for the day, and he would be then going to work. So yeah, that kind of puts into perspective who you are and what you're about. I was in awe watching what you did that year.
Yeah, well, you were a pretty big fan of it because it helped you out with a bit of your MBA writing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think that's what the Cardiff Devils might miss the most about you is that you were probably the best proofreader I've ever met, because when you would read my sentences and the way I had put the words together, just the way you explained it to me and the way you put it together and explained to me, it just, you made it so simple, and I was like, well, geez, why can't I write like that all the time? And I actually have kept that with me, like in my business life, is some of the things you taught me. Like, there was a time we were driving to the Swindon Arena because Cardiff didn't have any ice during preseason, and we were driving to Swindon, and I was finishing up my final capstone paper, and me and you were in the back seat of the car driving an hour and a half to practice, and you proofread my paper, and my goodness, the way you put the words together, like I had never seen words look so sexy.
Yeah, you learn a few different words during those trips, if I remember. We introduced you to some of the Queen's good English,
That's right. Oh yeah, I'm trying to think of that one word, but yeah, no, it's yeah. I like, that's the type of teammate you were, though, and that's how you stayed in professional hockey so long. Is when a guy like me would come over from Canada, you were the first guy to help us get things set up, get the apartment set up. What do you need? What can I take care of? You were great friends with my kids. Yeah. Talk about what a great first episode. Yeah. Yeah, top notch.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that.
And actually, so I guess we should get back into the hockey part of things, eh? So, how how do you become a professional hockey player and a doctor at the same time? Because I personally had a hard enough time just being a professional hockey player. How did you do both?
So the way it worked, obviously, I played in my junior years obviously in a rink nearby where my parents' house was. And then when I went to go to university, I basically just picked schools where there was an ice rink. So obviously it's a little bit different in the UK compared to Canada or the US. Every town or every city that you go to over there, there's at least a handful of hockey rinks nearby that you can choose from, right? But in the major cities in the UK where there's universities, it's quite limited, the number of universities in the same city as a hockey rink. So I was quite specific in the choices that I'd made. I only applied for schools which had a hockey team nearby. And when I got to university, I continued to play hockey. I mean, we still played juniors in the UK up to the age of 19. So I was playing 2 more years of junior. And then after that, there was the semi-professional team, where essentially you don't pay to play, but you don't get paid to play. And I played for that team then whilst I was at university as well. And then progressed through that team up to the Cardiff Devils. Franny and G gave me my first shot at the professional game. The team had been hit pretty hard by injuries that season, and I had a bit of a couple of standout seasons in the league below. So they brought me on board, and I got on great with them, and I got on great with my teammates. And luckily, ever since, they decided to keep me around. And it was just one of those things that happened very fluidly and naturally, in the sense that I was already studying, and in university and undergrad, when I first started, it wasn't so much of a big deal because we would practice in the evenings for the semi-professional team, and we'd only play maximum 2 games a weekend. Then when the professional opportunity came along, I was already doing my doctorate, and I spoke to my supervisor at the time, and I said, hey, I got this opportunity to play professional hockey at the same time. The downside for you is it means that I won't be able to be here all the time. And luckily I had a great guy who was my boss at the time, or my supervisor, who said, look, I really don't care when you get your work, your training done, as long as you get it done and you achieve good marks. And it just developed from there. And essentially, like you say, I would do practice in the morning, go straight from the rink to school, and do my work. And as long as I was getting it done and he was seeing impressive results, he really didn't care what time of the night it was that I was doing it or anything like that. So, we had a lot of long bus journeys back then, so that helped with writing papers and doing all of the studying too. So it was a busy time. I don't think there was much time for anything else in my life other than hockey and school. But it was one of those things that it worked out pretty well together in the end.
Yeah, no doubt. I actually learned a lot that year. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but I was a lazy guy before that year. And then doing the NBA, being a hockey player, having the kids, it taught a lot. Holy cow, what's wrong with me? Anyways, it taught me a lot about myself.
Too many kids already.
Seriously. It taught me a lot about myself watching you do your day-to-day. I realized what a person can accomplish in a day. Like, there is a lot of hours in 24 hours. Like, you can get a lot of shit done in a day. And I've lived that way since that year. So anyways, thanks for that. But yeah, like now I have so much going on, and it doesn't seem like too much because like I've seen what you can do in a day. So yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things you learn very quickly how to be an efficient with your time. There is a lot of hours, but at the same time, there's a lot of people spend a lot of dead hours doing things and spending time on things that really don't progress you any. So
yeah, and that's where I'm at. Like I'm running an engineering department. I got a couple rental properties, and I also am back in school taking a construction management course. And then I still got the kids and, all the other stuff. And I wouldn't be doing all that stuff if I wouldn't have seen what you do in a day, So there's that. Put that feather in your cap, okay?
I'll add it to the cap. I'll take that one.
Okay, so here's a good story I think we should bring up now. I think it's time. Why don't we talk about that year that I came to Cardiff and that team of guys we put together and ended up winning a Challenge Cup? Because I tell you, it's my favorite year of hockey I ever played. And when I think about starting this podcast, realistically, there's 6 or 7 guys on that team, at least minimum, that are some of the most interesting people I've ever met because we just had a whole team of absolute beauties.
Yeah, I mean that year was a special year for sure. I mean, I played I think 4 years or 3 years prior to that with under a different ownership group who treated the team in a very different way to the Calgary Four and Todd and Lordo who took over from them. And we were very much tight shoestring budget. You get a new stick if it was completely split in half. If it was cracked down the middle, you tape it back together and use it until it really breaks. And living in 5 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment, things like that. And it was a lot more of a sort of what you would consider for a UK type league. And to come from that, and I was already pumped the fact that I'd made it to the professional level for a number of years, and I was kind of satisfied. But then you start to get new aspirations in the sense of, I actually want to win something now. And it never seemed like that was ever going to happen under the old regime. And that was nothing to do with the quality of the players or the coach that was there. It was, there was a lot of extra distractions and budgetary restrictions that just didn't allow you to be the best team in the league. And they did the best with what they were given at the time. And then in came the Calgary Horsemen and the Four Horsemen, and they just completely revamped the whole thing. Todd and Lordo put together the biggest, best group of beauties you've ever seen in your life in the space of about 6 weeks, if I remember correctly. And it was honestly the best year. We won a Challenge Cup that very first year, and every guy on that team was like so much fun to be around. We had fun every weekend together as a group and bonded in ways that I never had with all of my other teammates in the past. And that year will always be a special year for me because it was that transition from being just a professional ice hockey player to being a champion, and that continued from that day forward. And it was made extra special by the fact that I got to be a champion for the first time with essentially 15 of my best friends for the year, and who I was more than happy to spend, all those hours each day with. And like you say, so many different characters and different kind of people that it just made it so interesting on a daily basis to come to the rink that it was never boring. And I think that's the biggest thing is everyone wanted to be at the rink around each other because we had the best time. And that atmosphere, as much as you try to recreate it in years gone by and as many championships as we may have won since, has never been recreated to the same level. Like there's never been a time when guys have enjoyed going to the rink more than that year.
I could not agree more. That was back when it was in the Big Blue Tent, the BBT, where we were essentially playing in a circus tent. It was supposed to be a temporary arena. Well, the new one was built because the one downtown became a shopping mall, right? So then they built that to become the temporary arena for 2 to 3 years. Well, then it ends up being there for about 10 years, right? And that was about the 10th year when I showed up. And I'll never forget the day I showed up and saw that arena. I had just been in Denmark. We're playing a little mini NHL arena. And you feel like a pro when you're playing in a nice arena, nice facilities. And then you show up at Cardiff and you're in the Big Blue Tent. And not one guy on that team was a prima donna. Not one guy complained about the amenities, the facilities. We were having showers with like a foot deep of water because the drains weren't draining, and everybody's in there and having a shower, and like it was just fun. It was fun to be at the rink. Nobody complained about anything. Everybody was just enjoying life, and that is exactly what I'm about. So that year was
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. The Big Blue Tent was a special place. I remember, that year we had, I played in that arena for a number of years at that point before you arrived, obviously, and you'd have the ground cave out in the dressing room, so they'd have to tape off the dressing room for a bit whilst they fix the hole in the ground. There was mushrooms coming out of the bottom of the showers where they put those plastic things over the top to try and keep it waterproof. And then, like say, you had a foot of water, and we were taking our cold. If you remember, our ice baths were two recycling bins that we filled with water from a hose outside, and then dumped a load of ice in. The equipment room was a shipping container out the back. Lauder's office was a shipping container out the back.
The GM's office
And
was too, yeah.
the GM's office was too, and I was just happy that all of a sudden we were getting free coffee and bagels on a daily basis. I was like, oh my god, look at this luxury we get now with this new ownership. Like, this is amazing.
uh yeah, if I could ever go back in time, that is the year. Like, and for me, like, that was the year I did my MBA, and I was so busy that I didn't know what was up or down, and like I'd show up to games so tired I felt like I could puke. But then you just go into autopilot because you played hockey for so long that you could just do it, right? Like, I'd be so tired, and then there'd be nights where you guys we'd play, we'd win, and it would be like a Saturday night, and I'd have to go home and write papers because I had two kids and I had to get the stuff done before it was due. And my goodness, but like, for that to be my most fun year of hockey is, I don't know. It just was a special group of people because you're right. Every time you showed up to the rink, you didn't know what was going to happen. I remember Deese, the equipment manager, every time an away team was about to show up, he would go into the away locker room and leave a huge dump in their toilet.
Yeah, well, it doesn't even. I think the best one of that was, and this wasn't Deese doing it, was actually when Belfast rolled into town one day, and Taff, their equipment manager, came and knocked on the door, and he said, "Hey, have you seen Deese?" I was like, "He's around here somewhere. Why? What do you need?" He's like, "Oh, I just was wondering if he could get someone from the rink to come and pull this dead rat out of the toilet." And like, we hadn't put the dead rat in there; it crawled in and drowned itself. But that was the kind of place it was, and it was like, no, not another one. And then like, this thing was the size of a small cat. Like, it wasn't just a normal sized rat. You couldn't just flush it down. Like, you had to get like the forceps and dig that puppy out.
Oh man, like that that arena was literally the stories that place could tell. I tell you, like, oh man, like when I got into the pregame speaking there, and I would hide in the closet and come out and surprise you guys and do a pregame speech. Like, all those stories, man, like, what a place, what a year, what a group of guys.
Yeah, and I owe a lot to that arena because, I mean, as we both know, I wasn't the most skilled guy in the league, and I was very much more of a headless chicken, run around, hit whoever moves, and bring energy where I could. So it was a lot easier for me in a rink that was half the size of a normal one because I only had to take 2 or 3 strides, and guys didn't have long enough to get out of the way when I came steaming at them. So, I owe that rink a lot because it probably significantly helped my career in the process.
Okay, I'll say one thing. You definitely didn't skate around like a headless chicken. What you skated around with was like, my brain is way bigger than yours, and you were skating around like, holy moly, I got too much knowledge in this brain, and you're skating around and you're like, man, this head is heavy because I got too much knowledge in here. Um, Anyways, that's what you were actually skating around like, because you're just too smart. You just were, I could see it the way you were skating around. You just got too much up there. But about that arena, like when I played there, it was exactly what I needed because my knee was hurt and I couldn't get around the ice the way I used to be able to. But it reminded me a lot of my childhood growing up in Elmira, the little arena we had before they built the new one. Like it was a tiny little arena and you had to know where to be, where the puck was going to go. You didn't have to skate fast and you didn't have to it wasn't like skating on the big ice where you're buzzing around all the time and you got to skate so gosh darn far. Like I hated playing on the big ice. When I saw the big blue tent and it was like the size of my backyard rink here, I was so happy because that meant I didn't have to skate anymore.
You just had to find your way to the slot, Wally, and then someone would put it on your tape and you'd do the rest, bring it home from there.
Well, I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, I'm not much of a forechecker, I guess you could say. Um, so anyways, where should we go from here? I think what we should talk about is since we've talked about how big your brain is, how much knowledge you have, and you're curing cancer, I think we should talk about the other side of you. When you go on ski trips with me without skis, could you please explain how we went on a skiing trip with no intentions of skiing?
Well, we had this trip planned at the end of the season. So we would, as a team, actually it was something that started that year, the 2015 year or whatever it was. After the first season, the decision was made. Well, let's all go on a trip together as a group of guys. And I think that first year, before you didn't come on the first trip actually, and then the following year we did another ski trip, and some of the higher mountains are still open at that time of year after the season's finished, and we would just go out and guys who just have had a hard long slog of the season, been playing it sensible and working hard on the ice, they just need to blow off some steam for a few days, right, at the end of the season. And yeah, I remember the boys, I think Joey Martin and Huddy had organized this trip, and I had already organized to go on one of my other buddies outside of hockey's stag do's in Estonia. So what it was meant to be, his stag do was meant to be 3 days long, and then the ski trip I think was meant to be 4 days long, and with you guys. And then I decided, right, well, what I'll do is I'll cut the Estonia trip short by a day. So I can do 2.5 days with the boys, and then I'll fly from Estonia to France, and then I just missed the first day with you guys, and I get the final 3 with you guys. So obviously I wasn't going to take skiing stuff with me to Estonia to then carry over to France. So you'd already said, I mean, that was the year you blew your knee out for a second time. So you hadn't skated in like 6 months. So there was no way in hell you were ever going to ski. So I thought, well, I won't take skis because at least I got someone to hang out with who's not going to ski too. And I remember I didn't get up actually. I just went out on I think it was the Saturday night with the boys. We went out until like, I don't know, 3 or 4 in the morning, and I had to leave at 5 to get the flight from Estonia through Amsterdam, then from Amsterdam down to Geneva, and then take a bus from Geneva to the mountains. And I remember just going through the night, drinking the night before, and just going home, packed my bag, straight back to the airport, onto the plane. I caught my connection by like 10 seconds, running through Schiphol Airport because the first flight was delayed. Got to Geneva, jumped on the bus, got to the chalet, and I think I passed out on the ground. I called you and you were like, oh, I'm up the top of the mountain. I'll come let you into the chalet now because the rest of the boys were skiing. And then you showed up limping your way down the street. And I think that day we spent the rest of the, like, I just dumped my bag in our room, and then I spent the rest of the day in the hot tub with you, didn't I? We just sat in the hot tub and drank about 8 bottles of wine.
Well, yeah, we don't know the over under of how many we drank, but we definitely were in the hot tub all day. Um, I actually think that was one of my most memorable trips I've ever had. So yeah, the that first night before you got there, it was an overcast day, and we show up at the ski hill, and I don't um, like really know where we're at. Like I know we're in where were we? Morzine, what's it called?
Morzine, yeah.
Yeah, Morzine, France.
Morzine.
And it was an overcast day, so you actually couldn't see how big the mountains were. You couldn't see how high they went. You couldn't see where they went because of the clouds. So I hung out at the chalet because I couldn't ski because of my knee. Like I there was no way I could. I was just told I was done hockey forever. And the first night, Carl Hudson, one of the most interesting people I've ever met, which needs to come on this podcast. But he had played there, so he had set up a dinner on the ski hill like a third of the way down. So the guys say to me, like, I understand you can't ski, but like you can't miss the night. Like this is what we're doing for the night. We are going to this chalet a third of the way down the mountain, and you need to figure out a way to be there. And I was like, okay. So that day, I was it was the end of year trip, so I wasn't feeling well. But all the other guys had gone skiing, and I'm sitting at the chalet, and guys would come back to take a break, and I'd have a beer with them or whatever and hang out with them while they took their break from skiing. And then it's the end of the night, and they're like, okay, have you figured out how to get to that restaurant? And I said, yeah, like there's a red saucer right there, like at the chalet. There's a little red saucer on the balcony. I'm gonna take that up the gondola, and I'll use that, and I'll get to the restaurant. So I went up there. We get to the top of the mountain. I'm with Mike Will, who also needs to come on the podcast because now he has like 100,000 followers for taking pictures. So that guy, me, him, and someone else, we were up at the top of the mountain, and it says the ski hill's closed because the groomers are out. And they're like, well, we have to go down there. That's where everybody is. That's where the restaurant is. And I get on my little red saucer, and I go through the line that says the ski hill's closed, and I buzz down there on my little red saucer, and I get to this restaurant, and we have a fantastic night, like a fantastic night. And this was the night before you got there. So then these owners know Carl, and they've set this all up, and he's going to have to come on to tell this story. But basically, these owners, at the end of the night, it's like, I don't know what time, 2 in the morning. We come out of this place. We've been drinking moonshine, everything else, having just a hoot, dinner, everything. We still have to get down 2/3 of that mountain. And I didn't know how high up we were because I had never seen how high up we were because of the clouds. So I didn't even realize like what we were doing. And there was two French guys there that Carl knew that he had played with, and they knew the mountain. But these owners of the restaurant, they had their snowmobiles and they got their lights out. So then we got about 12 to 15 guys that were all on the ski trip, and the French guys, and we got to still get down the mountain in the middle of the night. And I got my bad knee. I can't ski. I got my little red saucer, and I held on to the French guy's pole, like not in a bad way. I held on to his skiing pole, like not his pole. I held on to his skiing pole. So on the way down, I'm holding on to his pole while he skis down because he's like a pro skier, and I'm on a little red saucer, and he's holding on to me so I literally don't fall off a cliff and die. And then I saw what I had done the next day when you got there. There was no clouds. Man, like not then I realized why it took me an hour and a half to get down the hill. But man, it was
Why,
like
you'd think it would be quicker, how steep the slope was.
I it's one of the stories I've told my kids about that, like, it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever done because I didn't realize how high it went because of the clouds. I didn't know how high it went. But then when I had already done it, and then the next day we went up there, I think we were dressed in outfits, were we not? But anyways,
That
yeah.
was that was the sec that was the second that was the second day. That was the day after I arrived that we went up. We got dressed up because we wanted to do something different.
Well, why don't you tell the crowd about that one then, since you've cured cancer? Why don't you
We
tell them about the
we,
other side
we
of you when you went up to the top of the mountain with me?
well we spent that first day, didn't we? We were in the hot tub all day whilst the boys were skiing. They skied until, and then I guess they stopped at a bar on their way down. They didn't get back to us till like sort of 6 o'clock in the evening, and we were like prunes at that point because we just sat in the hot tub with the most glorious view over the Alps. And then so we were all boozed up, and then they'd had a few, but they'd been skiing it off as they went. We went out into town, if I remember right, that night, and then we the next day we woke up and they all went off skiing again. And we were like, well, what should we do with our day? And you said to me, I think the first thing you said was, oh, you should see what it looks like up top. It's beautiful. I was like, all right, let's go up top. So we take the gondola up to the top of the mountain. And I was like, it's a little bit boring just going up to the top and drinking. We got to do something here to get the boys going a little bit. So I had a morph suit that I'd taken with me because of the other stag do in Estonia, which I had on me. And you, for some reason, I don't even know why you had one, but you had your Spider-Man morph suit with you, and Hendo had his Venom morph suit. And we went up to the top of the mountain, and the boys were sitting there having some beers and stuff, and we rocked right up to them. They didn't even know who the hell we were at first. And then we just hung out with any and all strangers for the entire day who would talk to us. We just was guzzling some red wine and telling stories. And each time that we would be sat there with a group of people, a couple more would sit down, and then two more would leave, and we just kept this constant stream of new friends for like, it must have been like 6 hours we sat there just chatting shit with anyone who would listen. And then it got to the point where we were like, all right, well, we should probably head back down. And this is funny because it was the one time only in my life that I've ever been clapped off of a bus, because I think we were on fire on the bus, just chirping guys and giving everyone shit. And everybody was just having a great time with it. And then
yeah, I remember that. I totally remember when we got off the bus, the whole bus was cheering for us. Right? Everybody's getting sent back to wherever they're staying with their skis, and they've all been skiing all day, and we're in our outfits and our morph suits or whatever you call them, and we're on the bus and just having a hoot. And then yeah, we did get cheered off the bus, didn't we?
that was the first ever time, and probably the last I'll ever experience that. But that was a great day too. And then that's when we went down to the bottom of the mountain then after I met the rest of the boys, because we were actually late getting down. They'd already been down, got changed, and headed down to the town to get started on drinking. And we met them at the ridiculous bar at the bottom, which was like absolutely rammed. So we had to sneak around the backside and hop over a fence to get into the bar in the first place. And Lordo was making us all shotgun our beers, which were like piss warm and horrible. And then we hadn't eaten all day. And so you decided to let yourself into a wedding party who had a full buffet spread going. And you just loaded up your pockets with all of the ham and like the crackers and stuff. And you came out, and I just remember you pulling these long strings of like Parma ham from your pocket and feeding them to me like a wild animal out of your hand.
You were like a little baby bird eating the ham.
But and then that's when we, the same night, I think we then moved on to another bar where Steve George took over the microphone, and we were dancing on the tables and just shut that bar down. And we went back to that bar the second day, the third day, and we walked in, and I remember the owner saying to us, he's like, "You guys are still going?"
Dear. Yeah, no, that was a heck of a retirement gift. That the wife let me come on the trip with the guys. Because in Germany, the same thing would happen. Like basically at the end of the season, and basically it was anybody who was single would go on a trip. Like whoever was single or wanted to go, there was a trip where all the guys went. Well, I never really went on those trips in Germany, and I never went the whole time, but some of the stories and the things you'd hear were hilarious. But then my last year, that was my retirement gift, was that I got to go with you beauties and see what it was all about. And I tell you, it was that red saucer ride down the mountain, the hot tub with you the next day, and then going up to the top of the mountain. And like now that I'm grown up and I got a real job and I got to be serious all the time, like those are the days you just never get back. Like that was so much fun. Just living, man. Just we were just doing whatever we could to get the boys to laugh. We were just doing it for the boys. Like there was not, we weren't thinking about anything else. We weren't thinking about how anybody else was perceiving us. And you're right, like we're getting cheered off the bus. Like that means you're living a fun life.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite trips that we did. I mean, we did. I think I did 4 or 5 with the boys in the end. We did the first one to Austria, second one to France. We went to Magaluf for one, and then we went to Portugal for another. I think that was the last one. And then there was plans for one last year, but then we never really got a chance to do that because of the corona, obviously. But yeah, those trips are always classic. They were the best. Yeah.
Okay, well, so my wife brought this up. Lisa brought this up. She wants me to ask you, because you're in the game, you're in the know with this virus thing. She wants to know if she should be vaccinating the children and herself and me. I personally am like, well, whatever. Like if they tell me to do it, I'll do it. But like you tell me, because your brain's bigger than me and you've been trying to skate around with that big thing up there all these years. So you tell me what we're supposed to do.
I mean, you'll get the simplest answer you'll ever hear from me, which is that you should vaccinate whenever possible. There is absolutely no cause for concern, as far as I'm concerned, for the vaccines. I don't know why anybody would resist getting it. I don't know. It's beyond me that anybody would ever think that, Bill Gates is interested in controlling people. It's completely incorrect. There's no possible way that just because the word has nanotechnology written in it or nanoparticles means that there's got to be some sort of computer chip in there. It doesn't. It's completely benign in that sense. And why people think, Bill Gates would want to control Margaret Keenan 90 from Coventry. I what the hell would he do with it? So like, yes, vaccinate your kids and vaccinate yourselves, and there's no reason to not do it. And as soon as it's available for me to get it, I'd be first in line.
Well, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of stuff, and realistically, this is the first one. So I want a reason to bring you back on because we have more stories to tell and there's going to be more things happen. But the last thing I want to know is, how are you and the gal enjoying Switzerland, and what is it like living there? Because I see the pictures and I see where you're living, and then you put up the picture on Instagram of like, look at the office view, and I'm like, well, don't show me that. Like I I want to see it, but I don't want to see it because it's like, man, Switzerland's beautiful. Like it really is. I remember playing a preseason game in was it Lugano, and I saw palm trees in Switzerland, and I was like, what the hell is this? And then we played a hockey team that just dismantled us like 7-0. Like they just bent us over the table and just had at us. They were spanking our behinds and we were enjoying it. And the crowd at one point was chanting, "What league do you play in?" And then they had palm trees and they were all making like 500,000 a year to play there. So like, what is it like living in Switzerland? Because I always tried to get there. That was always my goal as a hockey player. I was trying to get to Switzerland, which I think a lot of guys are.
Yeah, I mean, as a place to live, I can't think of many places that are better. I can't, explain how lucky I feel to have been given the opportunity to do what I do in a place like this. And you said it yourself, like, my office is great. I'm halfway up the hill just by in the middle of Lausanne, and my office overlooks Lake Geneva in its entirety, and some of the sunsets and some of the weather storms and everything else that rolls through. It's just, the views are amazing. And then I get to live right down the road with exactly the same, setup. I have a really nice place with a great view right on the lake, and the quality of life here is just like nothing else. And we get to go skiing every other weekend because we're an hour from about, I don't know, 15 different mountains, and with ski resorts. And you extend that to 2 hours, you add another 15 mountains into the mix, and there's just never ending stuff to do. And the place is great. It's super safe, it's super nice, it's super welcoming. It's deathly expensive to live, but that's okay because that's compensated for through your salary. But the quality of life is like nothing I would have experienced. I had to recently go back to the UK over Christmas time, and I couldn't wait to get out of there. I mean, as soon as I got to the gate flying back to the UK, and some of the people I came across, I was like, oh, what am I doing? But yeah, it's been great. And I miss a lot of elements of the UK. Of course I do. I miss all my friends. I miss everything that's related to the Cardiff Devils every day. And that aspect of my life, that time in my life will never be replaced. But there's new things that I'm trying to plug that hole with. And whilst I haven't got to the point of being able to make the relationships that I had back in Cardiff because of the virus, a lot of the activities and just staying healthy in general is not proving too challenging. But I do miss the community feel. But hopefully that'll come with time when this virus gets out of the way.
Yeah, man, I had so many things while you were talking. I was like, oh, I could talk about this, that. I, yeah, I'm proud of you for what you're doing. I know that your passion is hockey, and but you're talented at curing cancer. Um, I get that. That's why I started this podcast, is because um, my passion is talking to you guys, talking to beauties, having a couple beers, and like not the beers, but like just talking to my friends. And like I think it's great for everybody that when you get older that we document this stuff, because I think we've lived pretty interesting lives, and I've never even really talked about it. I don't even know where any of the pictures are of all the stuff Lisa and I have done. Um, I think seeing a guy like you, that's what all this is about, is when I've met people like you, and I'm like, holy shit, like nobody knows about any of these people. And like there's so many people that I could interview that I'm like, people would find this interesting because you're interesting, and it's just I don't know. I'm very excited that you came on. I'm very honored that you were my first episode, and I won't lie to you, I can't wait for round two, because I can't wait to call you again and have a couple more
We
beers.
Well, we barely scratched the surface with some of this stuff, you know. Like we touched upon a few things. We didn't even get to you coming back to Cardiff for your little celebration. We didn't get to half of the stories of even other trips that we took to some of our teammates' weddings where we had a blast, and um, a bunch of other stuff on just in general road trips that we did. It's one of those things you could legit write a book about this stuff, and you'd have to make it a sort of a minimum age requirement associated with it, but you could write a really good book about it, and
No,
people would find it hilarious. There's reasons why guys like Biz get paid so much money to just tell their stories, because this is happening all over the place, you know.
well, exactly. And like I know Biz, and I think he was supposed to play when I was there. We like even announced it on the Jumbotron, like Biz is playing next weekend. He's coming, and then he never came, and so I've never met him. I don't know him. I played against him in the coast, but you know what I did do? Pressure's on, Biz. I sent him a message. I wrote to him on Instagram and I said, dude, I'm starting this thing. I played against you in the East Coast. I know all these guys. Do you think you could help me get legit here? And we'll see what happens. But it'd be cool if he would come on and tell his story just like this. He could talk about you and what you were doing while he was
Yeah.
there. I remember I heard that he was passed out like outside of an apartment and missed the bus or something, right? Before one of his first games? Or is that not right?
Well, when it was his first day arriving, but yeah, I promised him I'd save these stories for when I go on Spit and Chicklets with him, because actually when he came to play, I was his road roomie when we stayed in hotels, and yeah, he was a great guy. I love Biz. He's hilarious. I still talk to him from time to time. He'll shoot me a message here and there, and he says he'd get a comment on the podcast asking what I'm up to. So then he'll shoot me a message and say, we still need to figure out a time for you to come on and have a chat. So we'll make that happen at some point, I think. And I'll do my best to give you a little plug on there as well.
That's all right. I'm not doing this for the money. I'm just doing this for my own mental health because I won't lie to you. I haven't been this excited to start something in a really long time. Like, I have a reason to call all of my buddies and have a beer with them now. And like, look at this. Like, we wouldn't have been talking right now if I wouldn't have decided to do this. This wouldn't be happening right now. And it just warms my heart to talk to all my old buddies all over the place.
Well, I don't know if it wouldn't have happened. Every now and then, if Lisa went out and the kids were, just running around being idiots, and you were sat there bored, you'd give me a ring with a bottle of red and be like, "Hey, Pegs, what are you doing?" I'd be like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm bit. Colby, don't body slam your sister." And then
Oh,
we would shoot the shit for another hour or so after that.
okay. So I was gonna save this for Zoe's wedding day, but with my memory, I probably will never remember this by the time she gets married. So I have to tell a story about Zoe right now. Um, this gal is so Wally too. Like she is a Wally. Like there's no doubt about it. So the one morning where I threw out my back. I'm having back spasms. I don't know. I think I might have coughed and farted at the same time. So I threw my back out, right? And actually, it might have been a sneeze and a fart. But so I throw my back out and I'm sitting there having spasms. And I'm at the breakfast table and I say to the kids, I'm like, kids, today's the day. I have wiped your asses for years. It's time to pay me back because I can't get around to wipe it because I'm having back spasm, right? Like I can't wipe my butt. Like, so you're gonna have to help me. And then Colby right away, my son says, no, that's disgusting. I would never do that. My daughter says, I'll do it. I'm like, uh, so I ignored her. And I just like went to the bathroom without her. Um, and I'm sitting there on the toilet. I'm having a good time, morning break. And she opens the door. She pokes her head and she goes, Dad, are you done yet? I'm like, Zoe, stop it. You're not wiping my butt. That's disgusting. You don't want to ever see a hairy butt like this ever in your life. You're not wiping my butt. Like, go. Do you know what she said to me? Daddy.
What she said?
She said, Daddy, touch the floor. Because that's what I say to her. So I touched the floor. I touched the floor. So I'm legit like, I'm like, Zoe, seriously, this is going to scar you. You're not doing this. She goes, Daddy, touch the floor. So I bent over and I bent over. I'm like, Zoe, don't do this. Don't look at it. It's disgusting. And she like had folded up the paper and she walks across the room with the paper and she puts it between my cheeks like this. And then she runs out of the room laughing. It was the most ridiculous. So my daughter wiped my behind the other week. And Zoe, I love you. I'm sorry for saying this on the first podcast, but I wouldn't remember this by the time you get married because I have a bad memory, and I think people need to hear how disgusting you are.
And then that's amazing. It doesn't surprise me one bit that Zoe's. I mean, thankfully she got her mother's looks instead of yours. But other than that, that's the Wally traits aren't that bad, you know. But it does remind me of a few. That's something else we didn't even touch upon was some of the stuff I had to do as sort of makeshift doctor for the team at times as well, because that takes me back to a story where I ended up essentially having to wipe one of the guys' asses too. So we can cover that in the next podcast if you want as well.
Sorry, you. Okay, I don't know if I could. Okay, you wiped the guy's ass?
Wow, it was a little bit more complex than that. It's disgusting. But just think hemorrhoids and a ruptured hemorrhoid on the ass and somebody basically not being able to play unless it was dealt with in the proper way to be kept clean. So there was a couple of procedures which had to take place that at the time we didn't have a doctor there, so I had to do it.
Um, I don't know what I don't even know what to say about that. Um, um, I think we should say that's enough for one episode, and we're gonna bring Pigs back on to discuss what he did with the hemorrhoids. Um, what do you think, Pigs?
Amongst other stuff. Amongst other stuff, we can talk about some of the other doctor stuff I had to do, which is always entertaining. Which is always, if you think about it, it's sort of atypical for lower league, 4-letter league type activities. So we could get into some of that on the next podcast of some of the extracurriculars that I had to do as part of the team.
Well, I won't lie to you, man. There's so many stories to be told, and I'm like, that's what I guess gets my juices flowing right now. Is like literally, I don't do anything anymore. I with the virus and the lockdown, like I don't even do anything. But like I get to look forward to talking to guys like you every week and hearing this stuff. And it brings me back to a time, where there wasn't a virus, there wasn't so much negativity, and Wally was Wally. Like now I work a real job, and for the most part I try to be a bit of Wally, but there's a lot of Brent in there. And nobody likes Brent. People like Wally way more. Um, so I think this is bringing back some of the Wally, and I am so thankful that you agreed to come on and be the first ever episode. I don't think there's anybody else in the world that has a cooler hockey story. The only thing we didn't cover before we say goodbye is you never even said how you cured cancer and how you saved the mice. Like what are we doing here? You got to tell the people about the mice and the tits and the boobies.
Yeah. Well, it was the press or the media and everyone seems to have this. They tend to over exaggerate new scientific discoveries and where they sort of suggest that you've cured the disease, and it's a long way from that. And what I did find in my research was a potential treatment that could, or a combination treatment that could lead to long-term survival benefit for patients. And I was looking specifically at something called cancer stem cells that we believe are responsible for these, disease relapse and drug resistance. And whilst it worked great, I did it by genetically modifying the tumor cells, which is something which is a little bit too advanced still for us to put into practice in patients right now. So it needed to be translated into a drug. And even at that point, now we've got a few drugs that do it. You need to get those through a series of clinical trials, which takes typically 15 to 20 years. So long way off from ever being anything that's actually going to be given to a patient, unfortunately. But that's exactly where I work now, is in that space of getting these new discoveries put into patients so that they can realize their full potential. And that's what my new job is all about, is really just making those scientific discoveries into real treatments for patients.
So, okay, last question. I know I need the Coles notes version of this, but genetically modified, that is basically saying that you're taking a healthy thing and then cloning it to make it another healthy thing instead of it not being healthy. Am I crazy or not?
In a way, you've got it a little bit backwards, because the things that I'm modifying are the tumor cells. So they're not healthy in that sense. But what I'm doing is altering the genetics of the tumor cells so that they would then die, is essentially what I did on a basic level. Was I altered the tumor cell genetics to show how important targeting a specific thing within the tumor cells would be for them to be able to survive, and it killed them all off, basically.
Okay. So I was close. I just backwards. So you're basically saying
You went far off.
so basically you're saying you got them all to fight each other instead of what I was saying, where you were trying to make them all get along and all be healthy.
Yeah, you could think of it as I turned them into instead of a Hendo in a fight, I turned them into a Brent Walton into a fight instead, so that they could be knocked down way easier.
What do you mean? I was a fantastic fighter. Look at these hands. These things are knockout artists. Like seriously, like look at what that thing could do to you. I mean,
I think it was like Owen. I think you were like 0-2 in the time we played together. No.
no, actually, I know we got to end this because my mother told me, she said, people don't want to listen for too long. You got to shut it down. And I said, okay. But the fighting, I told Lisa, like, I didn't mind fighting. Like, I have no problem with beaten up. I really don't have an issue with it because I'm not a good fighter. I'm better without skates on. But I told Lisa I'd been in Germany for however long, 6 years, and then we go to Denmark and nobody's fighting. Nothing's happening. Nobody fights. People fight with their gloves on, and it's embarrassing. And then we go to the UK at the end, and people are fighting again. Like there's fights happening all the time. We got Hendo, we got Bachi, we got like the list goes on. There was a lot of fighters on our team, and everybody's fighting. And I said to Lisa, I said, I got to get in one more fight before this is over. Like I got to test myself and give her a whirl here. I got to see what happens. And she goes, well, if you got to do that, then just don't do it while Colby's there, like our son. She goes, I don't want him to see you get beat up. And I was like, well, I mean, whatever. Like I might win, you know. Like I would. My goal was always to like skate forwards, and put my head in their armpit, and then just swing up. I would just keep skating forwards with my head in your armpit and swing up, because then like what are you going to do if you're skating forwards? Like you can't get beat up if you're skating forwards, right? Like you got to skate at the guy. So anyways, I had a system down. But then Carl Hudson, right? Do you remember that? He's cutting across, he's going over the blue line, and that douchebag, what Noble, comes across and literally lays on his knees and like completely takes Carl out, who is one of my best friends. Absolute beauty that needs to come on here, Carl. He does a complete flip in the air, and it's like, I was like, well, you can't do that to Carl. Like, and I'm right here. And I was literally behind him waiting for the drop pass, and he does the full flip, and his legs and everything go crazy, and like I think he might be dead. And then there's the guy, right? And I decide to fight him. I'm like, well, you can't do that to Carl. And I fight him, and I would say I hung in there. I don't think I won the fight. I definitely didn't win the fight, but I didn't lose as badly as I've lost before. But I think that's what wins championships, right? Like that's what brings a team together, is like if the little guy that scores goals will fight, like that's what wins championships. But anyways, like that's what that whole team was in Cardiff. Was we were just a bunch of guys that would do anything for each other. Like we really were. Like realistically, I call you and I say, I'm starting a podcast and I want you to be the first episode. You didn't say maybe, you didn't say like any, you said, I'll be there. What time? When do you need me? And that's what that team was. And that's why we won. And that's why teams win, is people that will help each other and people that will do anything for each other. Like we were a family that year. And that is what I miss. And that's what I miss in my life. And now I work a normal job and I got guys that are working for me. And, you know, I try to be their friend and their boss, but like, when you break it all down, back when we were being beauties, like there's nothing better than that.
No, it was that same incident. It was Marty with the water bottle, wasn't it? He pelted him right in the face afterwards, I think, as he was walking to the dressing room. He really got him with a good one. But that was exactly what that team was all about. Every guy would always stand up for each other. And I remember being on the fourth line a couple of times. I got dragged into a few scuffles, which ended up getting me punched in the head too. But like that's just part of that team that year. But yeah, there was a great group of guys. And I didn't think that'll ever be replicated. I mean, this is what I mean. You could write a whole book just about that one year. No matter the second year that you came back and blew your knee out, and then we had a bunch of other stories from that year too, of you hiding in bathrooms whilst we were all getting ready, and then the comeback and all of these other stuff. Like we really need this to be like a 4-parter discussion, even just for my stories with you. That's not even including people like Carl and Hendo and Marty and all of these guys.
And that's what's absolutely ridiculous about that 1 year of hockey is that it can spawn this much love and brotherhood and yeah, I hadn't been around a team like that year in so long. And when I was playing in Denmark, Germany, there'd be the team emails that come out from the coach or whatever, and it would say like, do this workout, do that. We'll see you this day at this time. And then I signed in Cardiff and I got put on the team email list. And the emails going back and forth between the guys were so incredible that I was so excited to get to Cardiff. I had never played there. I had never met any of the guys, but I just saw this email string of hilarious emails of I'm like, these guys are hockey players. Like, these guys are beauties. This is what I need in my life. And I got there and you guys were exactly what I wanted. But the weird part was when you were sending those ridiculous emails, it would say at the end of this ridiculous hockey email that was hilarious, it would say cancer research, blah, 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 on your signature at the end of the email. And I was like, who am I going to play hockey with?
Yeah, that would have been I think from my work email address and send in those at the bottom. Yeah. Yeah, that would have confused you a little bit. I can see that.
Oh, but I couldn't wait because the humor in the emails was exactly what I needed in my life at that time. I had been on a team that they were serious. They were all serious. They were all into it. They were all, you know, there was no personality on the team before. There was just, you know, they were just pros. And when we got to Cardiff with that group of guys, I'm telling you, the substance, the people, the characters that were on that team, like now starting a podcast and thinking about it, I'm like, well, I don't want it to just be about Cardiff. I want it to be about these different people and all these different journeys. That team had about 8 people to 10 people that I'm like, these are real stories that people need to hear. They're incredible people, Dougie, Carl, Hendo, Matthew Myers, who's won every trophy in the UK. Ben Bounds said he'll come on, and don't even get me started on the goat. I mean, I spray painted myself as him. So like, it's incredible. Like all the different stories we could tell.
Well, you had a little help with the spray paint. That
Well,
wasn't.
yeah.
I seem to think there was another artist involved there.
Yeah, I guess we'll save that for the next podcast, eh? Because I guess we're probably running behind, and my family's at a bush party. They want me to come to the bush party and cook hot dogs in the bush. Do you know what that is? Do you know what a bush party is? You grew up in Canada, or
You just go and sit in the bush and make a fire, or what?
kinda. I think you shoot animals too if they're around. I don't know. But
Ah,
they
okay.
got a fire going. They got hot dogs. So I'm gonna head over there and make sure everybody's okay. Um, but man, thank you so much. Like, I honestly, I can't thank you enough because realistically, I mean, I think this is a cool conversation. I mean, if people want to hear it, they'll hear it. If they don't want to, they won't. That's fine. I don't care if anybody listens to this because this is for my own mental health. Like, I miss all you guys. I miss you, and I have no reason to call you until I started this.
but yet you did still sometimes. Sometimes you still did, and we can make it like a 4 or 5 parter. We'll do some more. We definitely have to cover the comeback story, because there's a few funny stories in there for sure.
All
We didn't
right.
even cover like after the Challenge Cup win or any of that stuff either.
Well,
Like there's
that's
a
what I
lot still
mean.
to
Like, there's
tell.
so many stories. Like, where do you even begin, right? Like, like, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of stories to cover. Uh, but I just can't thank you enough. I think we should sign off now because everybody, if anybody ever listens to this, who effing knows, right? If anybody listens to this, they'll be like, well, you got to get the Pigman back on. Like, you got to start talking about the après ski parties, like we got to hear about
Yeah,
those. I Your story from the year before I went on the guys trip was incredible too. There's so many stories in the hockey world that people don't know because they didn't play in the NHL. I didn't play in the NHL. Never had the body type for it. I think just because we never played in the NHL doesn't mean that our stories aren't NHL caliber. That's my whole opinion. I think the stories I have in my vault of the things I've heard from my buddies, they're better than the guys in the NHL because they're all robots and they're all so worried that like somebody might smell their fart or something, you know?
yeah. Well, we have the NHL of stories. They look up to us in that regard. That's for sure.
There's no doubt that anybody has stories like ours. Like they're like, yeah. So thank you, Piggott. We're gonna sign off now, and this is episode 1 of Two Ales and Hockey Tales with Wally. And hope everyone enjoys.